I never realized that the DJs had one deck, not two, which is a really crucial thing, because like we go to a club and there's two decks and they mix them and it's seamless, but these guys don't do that. They stop the record, put sound effects on, and then put another one on really quickly, and it's really bizarre, but it actually creates a really unique sound. And in terms of the edit, it gave us a lot more stuff to play with, sound effects, this kind of stuff, you know. And so it was slowly we got more and more immersed in that world.
You've got to emotionally connect with this and stitch this epic scenarios together in a way that is authentic and true. That's a big feat for somebody that you might not necessarily know. So what was the thing that made it click for you and think, this is how I'm going to do it?
Well, I mean, like Helen, and I mean, I lived through a lot of, apart from Mangrove, which was before I was only just born then. So I remember the Brixton riots. I remember the Birmingham riots. I remember, you know, like parties like Lovers Rock, Sound Systems, going to Notting Hill Carnival, things like that, but from a different point of view, which is the really crucial thing about it. And so this was like another country for me. This is what I saw, was like, oh, is this the same place that I've lived in for the last 40 years, 40, 50 years or something? And of course, that was the sort of path that I went. And so Steve and I had lots of conversations about music, what sort of music I was into. And I was sort of into punk rock and things like that, which actually had quite a lot of, not similarities in the music, but in the attitude of reggae and punk had a kind of like a fusion, and it was happening in Notting Hill and that. And so, you know, Steve and I talked about that type of thing, you know, what we're into, but also what filmmakers from that time. And so that was a sort of journey, you know, apart from, you know, exploring the kind of like the music, which, I mean, going back to the music, that was a massive part of the films. I mean, particularly Alex Wheatle, Lovers Rock, and even Mangrove is like sort of, it gave it an identity, and we did a lot of work on it like that, and it sort of helped to give it life, you know. And so that was a big key for me, and particularly in Lovers Rock, is rediscovering that music, which is I knew some of it, but like I didn't know a lot of the rest of it, and so discovering all that again was just like, for me, was just something incredible. And of course, at a party like that, I never realized that the DJs had one deck, not two, which is a really crucial thing, because like we go to a club and there's two decks and they mix them and it's seamless, but these guys don't do that. They stop the record, put sound effects on, and then put another one on really quickly, and it's really bizarre, but it actually creates a really unique sound. And in terms of the edit, it gave us a lot more stuff to play with, sound effects, this kind of stuff, you know. And so it was slowly we got more and more immersed in that world. And what was I saying? Yeah, and about filmmakers, and about essentially all the stories were different, but they had a kind of a sort of truth about them in terms of the way they were shot. You know, there was no frills really. Essentially, it was in a way that we did I love like Alan Clark, who was like sort of did a lot of movies in the 70's, 80's, and that Steve was one of our references to the movies, that TV films and things that he made, which, you know, like Made in Britain and things like that, you know, which were really kind of straightforward sort of storytelling, but like full of life. And that was kind of how the whole thing began. That's what I had in my head. And yeah, and then again, I lived through the period, so I had a lot of personal references, but just from a different point of view.
Thank you, Jacqueline. What you said, that is, you know, you've got to try and find an angle that's not been seen before. So, you know, we've seen the 70s visualized in so many different ways.
It's not so much that you don't want to use something that's been seen before in a way, but what happens a lot with 70s clothes is that we reuse them. So we keep making them fashionable again. So there's like a 90s way of wearing the 70s, and there's a 2000s way. Right. And it means that it doesn't, like, it kind of takes away from something that you feel about the period. So in order to get to the period, you want to find things that haven't been like overused. And also you just want to make sure that people wear the clothes, if you do find like the original piece that's exactly the right thing, you then have to be sure that you wear it in the way it was worn then, not the way we would wear it now if we reappropriate it. So it was about that. It was trying to get back to something that would feel, it wouldn't feel kind of tired or too familiar. It would feel like something that was definitely part of the period. So it was that really. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but that's fine. That's good. No, that's good, because it was I had kind of misinterpreted what you're saying, and that's a real clear explanation. But also then, how do you not let the characters become caricatures of this time and of this moment, and pull in the authenticity? Like, was it a struggle, or was this a different project than anything you've done before? Was there anything you learned new, or had to kind of like, I'm not experienced, I'm starting fresh in this at this point?
So that was actually my main thing. That was the main thing that when I spoke to Steve, and when I realized that I was going to do the job, and I really wanted to do it like to the very best that I could. And what I wanted to do is I really wanted to get something, I wanted to get the sort of an authentic diversity into it, in the sense that I didn't want it to pick up the same old things that people pick up again and again, that they say signify that period or that kind of person. And I wanted to look more closely and in greater detail at the reference. And I wanted to really try and get back to something that was more authentic. And so in that sense, that's why that ties into what I just said about not wanting to kind of use things that are a bit tired because they get used over and over again. You can kind of find different things about that you can give to different characters. And then it's also about a balance, just like everything else is, so that you want, you know, the way you dress your principal characters is slightly different to ways you may dress the crowd, just because you want them to be more noticeable. But one of the amazing things I think about Lovers Rock, which speaks to all of us in all the departments, and obviously largely to Steve and Xavier, is the fact that Lovers Rock just didn't really have principal actors. It did have principal actors, obviously it had the protagonist, but the context and the crowd and everybody in the scenes was equally as important. And so there wasn't that sort of difference between the crowd and the principals. It really was a party, and I've never really experienced that before. Because it was largely a joyful experience watching the party, it was really important to try to stylize it a bit without compromising what we wanted to do in terms of authenticity, but just to tweak it so that it became something beautiful. And Steve has mentioned before that slightly fairy tale and magical, but something almost like it was how you wanted to remember parties were. You know, there was something really kind of special about it. So in that sense, it's slightly heightened.